Welcome, dear friend, to another midnight tale from Rushi's Moonlight Storybook of Brands. If you're lying awake tonight, troubled by something you said, or something you wrote, or words you wish you could take back, stay with me. By the end of this story, you'll understand something profound about the weight of our words and the freedom that comes from accepting their permanence. Tonight, we explore a brand that changed human destiny without ever firing a bullet, a brand that shaped wars, freedom, and oppression, all through a simple instrument that promised one revolutionary thing: reliability when it mattered most. This is the story of Montblanc, and it begins with three ordinary men in 1906 Hamburg obsessing over a problem that was quietly destroying humanity's most important moments. Picture yourself in the early 1900s. You're signing a peace treaty that could end a war. Your hand moves across the paper, and suddenly the ink leaks. Or perhaps you're writing your will, securing your family's future, when the ink skips and breaks, making your wishes illegible, contestable, meaningless. This wasn't rare, this was life. Ink failed constantly, and when ink failed, truth failed with it. Contracts became invalid, letters were destroyed, legal documents were voided by a single leak. In a world built on written agreements, on recorded thoughts, on preserved words, the tools for writing were catastrophically unreliable. The flow of ink depended on pressure, angle, even the weather. Writing wasn't an expression, it was a battle. Three craftsmen in Hamburg, Germany understood this terror intimately. They became obsessed with one question, a question that would change everything. What if writing could happen without interruption? What if your thoughts could travel from mind to paper exactly as you intended them, every single time? In the Gita, Lord Krishna tells Arjuna that yoga is skill in action. These three men understood this deeply. Perfection isn't about eternity, it's about absolute reliability in the moment that matters most. They weren't chasing infinity, they were chasing certainty. Now here's where this story becomes strange and beautiful. The real protagonist isn't the founders, it isn't even Montblanc the company, it's ink itself. Ink begins this story as a fragile, unreliable servant, constantly betraying the hands that tried to control it. But through human ingenuity, through obsessive craftsmanship, ink transforms. It becomes controlled, disciplined, obedient. And then something remarkable happens. Ink becomes immortal. Every signature you've ever made will outlive you. Every word you've written in permanent ink continues existing after your last breath. The servant becomes the eternal witness. Think about that tonight as you drift to sleep. Your words, once committed to permanence, become part of something larger than your life. Krishna speaks of this in the Gita when he says, "There was never a time when we did not exist, nor will there be a future when we cease to be." Our words, once made permanent, join that eternal fabric. They outlive the hand that wrote them. By 1909, the three founders had created something unprecedented. They didn't call it a luxury pen. They didn't call it a status symbol. They called it the safety pen. Safety from accidents, safety from doubt, safety from ambiguity, safety from the betrayal that had haunted every important written moment in human history. They thought they had solved a technical problem. They believed they had given humanity a gift, the ability to preserve truth without interruption. They had no idea they had created a moral burden that would haunt the 20th century, because soon, very soon, their perfect pens would be held by different hands, and those hands would write things the founders could never have imagined. The same pen, that's what keeps me awake at night. The exact same instrument, engineered for absolute reliability, begins appearing in the hands of writers drafting manifestos of truth, in the hands of politicians declaring war, in the hands of leaders signing peace treaties, in the hands of dictators enforcing unspeakable cruelty. A Montblanc signs the Treaty of Versailles. You might think of peace, but historians know better. Those signatures, permanent and precise, planted the seeds of another world war. Another Montblanc signs declarations that redraw borders, separating families forever, erasing nations from maps. A revolutionary uses one to draft a constitution of freedom. A tyrant uses an identical pen to sign death lists. The pen cannot choose. It can only obey the hand that holds it. This is Krishna's teaching to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. The soul is neither the doer nor the cause of action. The pen, like the soul, is merely an instrument. The karma, the consequence, the moral weight, all of it belongs to the hand that wields it. But imagine, just for a moment, being one of those three founders. It's 1940, you open the newspaper, you see photographs of concentration camps, cities bombed to ash, millions displaced, and somewhere in your heart you know that every one of those orders, those death lists, those declarations of genocide, they were written with pens engineered to never fail. Your pens. Pens that made evil as permanent as love, as lasting as truth. What if ink never failed? That was the original question, the innocent question, the question of craftsmen trying to solve a problem. But after the wars, after watching what Permanence had preserved, the question transformed into something much darker, much more profound. What if humans realized their words could outlive them? What if creators understood they could never control what their creations would be used for? Every invention carries this wound. The moment you bring something into the world, it's no longer yours. It has its own destiny. It will be used in ways you never intended, for purposes you never imagined. Krishna speaks of this surrender in the Gita. Abandon all varieties of duty and just surrender. The creator must eventually let go of their creation, release it to the universe's will, accept that control was always an illusion. This is the wound every creator carries. After the wars, something fundamental changed in Montblanc's soul. The brand could no longer be just about utility, about solving the technical problem of reliable ink flow. Writing was no longer innocent. Words were no longer neutral. The act of making something permanent had become a moral question. Montblanc transformed from a tool into a philosophy. They began asking a different question, not how to make writing easier, but how to make writing more conscious. If your words will outlive you, shouldn't you think harder before you write them? They started making their pens heavier, more deliberate, more expensive, not as a luxury signal, though the world would interpret it that way, but as a pause button. A $500 pen makes you hesitate. That moment between thought and permanence, that brief pause where you feel the weight of the instrument in your hand, that's sacred. That's where consciousness enters the act of writing. The Gita teaches that the wise see knowledge and action as one. Montblanc began to understand this. The act of writing and the weight of what you write cannot be separated.
Now we arrive at your world, at our world. We live in an era where words have become disposable. Delete, edit, erase. We type thousands of words every day that will vanish tomorrow. The digital age gave us the illusion that our words don't matter because we can always take them back. But here's what nobody expected. In a world of infinite, erasable, forgettable words, The permanent ones became precious again. Your signature on a marriage certificate, your name on a will, a handwritten letter to someone you love, the final notes on your life's greatest work. These moments, these rare moments of permanence, they carry a weight that digital words can never hold. The ability to make something last became a luxury. The courage to write something that cannot be unsent, that's revolutionary now. Krishna's wisdom echoes through this paradox. That which is non-existent can never come into being, and that which exists can never cease to be. For most of human history, permanence was the default. Words carved in stone, etched in wood, written in ink on paper. Permanence wasn't a choice. It was simply how the world worked. But now permanence is rare, chosen, precious. Montblanc doesn't sell pens. They sell the luxury of commitment, the luxury of finality, the luxury of saying, this thought matters enough to make it permanent. This word deserves to outlive the moment. This signature represents a decision I'm willing to let echo through time. This is a brand built on the idea that some things should last, that some words deserve immortality, that some moments are worth preserving exactly as they happened, without the option to edit, to revise, to pretend they never existed. As Krishna says, be steadfast in yoga, perform actions. The commitment to permanence is itself a spiritual practice. It's the act of saying, I was here, I thought this, I meant this, and I'm willing to let it stand forever. Montblanc sits at an intersection no other brand occupies. They have quietly influenced wars, borders, freedom, oppression. Think about the moral complexity of that position. Every peace treaty signed with the Montblanc pen also means every declaration of war. Every constitution guaranteeing freedom means every law enforcing oppression. The brand cannot celebrate its role in history without also acknowledging its role in atrocity. The pen doesn't choose between the revolutionary and the tyrant. It serves both with equal reliability. At the heart of this story lives a question about death, about the terror of disappearing completely, leaving no trace, being forgotten. Montblanc is built on mortality anxiety, on the fear that we will vanish unless our thoughts remain. This is why people still buy expensive pens in a digital age. It's not about status, it's about legacy. It's about the deep human need to leave something behind. But here's the paradox that keeps me awake at night. Permanence preserves everything. Not just your wisdom, but your foolishness. Not just your love, but your hate. Not just your moments of clarity, but your moments of terrible judgment. Your best self and your worst self, immortalized together, outliving you both. The Gita's ultimate teaching returns to us here. You have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruits of action. The founders created the perfect pen, but they could never control what the world wrote with it. You have the right to write your words, but you cannot control how they'll be read, what they'll mean. So, dear friend, if you came to this story troubled by your words, here's what I want you to understand as you drift toward sleep. That your thoughts, once expressed, become part of the world. So, tomorrow, before you speak, before you write, before you commit something to any form of permanence, pause. Feel the weight of it. Not the weight of fear, but the weight of consciousness. Ask yourself, is this thought worthy of permanence? Is this word something I'm willing to let outlive this moment? As Lord Krishna concludes the Gita, wherever there is consciousness and wherever there is action, there will always be victory. Where there is thought combined with permanence, there is legacy. Sleep well tonight, knowing this. Your words are your only immortality. The thoughts you choose to preserve, whether in ink or in the memories of others, these are what remain when you're gone. Choose them with the care they deserve. Write them with the weight they carry. Let them be permanent, not because you fear being forgotten, but because they're worth remembering. This was the story of Montblanc, the brand that made permanence a luxury, and in doing so, made consciousness a necessity. Until the next moonlight tale, dear friend, may your words be worthy of their permanence.